Hello guys, it's Julia. So today's video is going to be all about my top 10 favorite drugstore cruelty-free foundations, or I guess affordable cruelty-free foundations, because some of these cannot be found at the drugstore per se, but they are very affordable. Pretty much everything in this video is going to be under, I want to say $15, so these are some of my favorite affordable options for great foundations. And of course, finding a good cruelty-free affordable foundation can be a bit of a struggle, especially because all the favorite drugstore foundations of big beauty YouTubers are usually from L'Oreal or Maybelline, non-cruelty-free brands. So I wanted to share with you guys my favorite options for a great, conscious, cruelty-free, and very affordable foundation. I honestly love foundations. I love trying them out. I have so many in my collection. I am planning on doing a full foundation collection video, so if that's something you guys want to see, please let me know in the comments. But I wanted to share with you guys my top 10 favorites because I know that some people really want to expand their collection, and I think affordable foundations are a great way to do that. It's also very important to me to find very good cruelty-free options. I have been vegan for about, I want to say 3 years this March, so it's kind of a big milestone for me, and I've been cruelty-free with my beauty collection for, I want to say, a year. Sometimes I make slip-ups, and sometimes I do my best all the time is what I'm trying to say. Sometimes I do make mistakes and accidentally buy something. Case in point, I was told that Dior was cruelty-free. They are not, so I do have some stuff from them in my collection. But I always make an effort to buy cruelty-free everything. I never ever go out of my way to buy anything that's non-cruelty-free, and I never buy new things from brands that are not cruelty-free. Also, I know that I'm probably gonna get some questions about what is on my face today, this eye look, which is very mermaid inspired. I post all my makeup looks on my Instagram. I am a freelance makeup artist as well as a full-time student, so I kind of just do makeup in my free time. That's what you guys have been asking me a lot in the comments, like, do I do professional makeup? I do like freelance makeup every now and then, but I'm not a professional makeup artist. I am self-taught, so I post all my makeup looks on there. If you ever want details for what I'm wearing on my face, you can probably find the details on my Instagram. I will have this particular look linked in the description box. If you can't find it when I upload this video, just let me know in the comments and I'll update it. So yeah, with that being said, let's get right into the video. I hope you guys enjoy it, and let's go into my top 10 favorite drugstore cruelty-free foundations. I'm going to start off with what I'm wearing today, which is a new foundation from LA Girl. This is the Pro Matte HD High Definition Longwear Matte Foundation. It's a long name, but just LA Girl Pro Matte is what I'm going to call it. I am in the shade Bisque. I believe that's the second lightest shade. They do have a fairly decent shade range. I know that drugstore foundations in general don't normally have the best foundation shade ranges. High end is normally better for a great inclusive shade range, I mean, with the exception of Tarte. But LA Girl just released this foundation. I've heard a lot of great reviews on it, and Casey Holmes in general, I really trust her foundation reviews, and I pick up a lot of what she recommends. So she does have a pretty different skin type to me. I have pretty normal skin, normal to combination. My T-zone does get oily throughout the day, but my cheeks are pretty dry, so it can be hard to find a foundation that works on my entire face, but for the most part, I can wear pretty much every foundation on the market and make it work for me in some way, shape, or form. So with Casey Holmes' recommendation, I did pick this one up, and I have been loving it. As you can see, I think it looks pretty good on my face. I don't know, not to toot my own horn or anything, but I think I look pretty good today. It's beautiful. It's definitely very matte. I did not have to set this with powder. Normally I like to set all my foundations with powder, non-negotiable, but this one I just felt like it looked matte already and it wasn't going to move around, so I didn't feel like I needed to set this one. I've heard some people comparing this to the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Foundation. I do think that one's a little bit more liquidy. This one's a little more moussey in texture, but it does dry down to a really nice matte finish. I think this one is a little bit better for drier skin. The Fenty Beauty one is definitely geared towards oily skin, but this one can work on a variety of skin types. So I really have been enjoying this one. It just looks beautiful on the face. It also looks great on camera, and I just think this is absolutely stunning. This one is only $10. You can find it at Ulta. And I did want to mention with each of the foundations my preference for applying them. So I know that's not something people talk about a lot in their videos, but I think it's a very important part of applying foundation. So I prefer this one with a sponge. It can work with a brush, but I prefer it with a damp beauty sponge. My favorite one right now is the Fenty Beauty sponge, but this one is a really great foundation. Definitely recommend this one. I think it looks pretty good on my face, and I've absolutely been loving this. I'm just going to follow that up with the dewy counterpart. So this is the LA Girl Pro Coverage Foundation. This one is an HD High Definition Longwear Illuminating Foundation. So this one's a little bit more dewy. As you can see, the bottle is very different, and these do look like very, very different colors. This one looks a little bit more orange in the outside bottle, but I do find that the foundation is a little bit paler and more true to my complexion. I think this one is like a perfect match for my skin, but this one, it's a little bit more peachy than I would like it to be, but it doesn't look super bad on the skin, and I really love this foundation. I'm in the shade Porcelain. London. This is one of the only foundations I've found at the drugstore that's like very full coverage but also has a nice dewy finish. This one has a great amount of coverage. It smooths so easily onto the skin and it blends very well, but it still retains some of that nice dewy moisture. It doesn't dry down completely, and I think this is great if you're wanting something a little bit more natural. If I'm going for this foundation on a day where I'm wearing a ton of makeup like today, like a full beat, I will probably set it with powder because I don't like having very dewy skin on like a very elaborate makeup day. I just think it looks kind of weird, but on a more natural makeup day, if I'm wanting something a little bit more full coverage, I'll go for this one and I won't set it and I'll just let that dew shine through, and I think it's a really, really beautiful option. This one, I believe it's $9. I like this with a sponge and a brush equally. I don't really have a preference either way, so whatever I have on hand, I will probably use that. But this is a really great foundation. I think it's definitely amazing, and they do have a pretty good shade range as well. So LA Girl has two great foundations I definitely recommend, and I love that they have two different options depending on what kind of finish you like. Continuing on with the full coverage foundations, the Milani Conceal and Perfect 2-in-1 foundation and concealer. I actually had a really bad first impression with this one just because I got the shade 02 Natural, which was the second lightest shade in the shade range. I do believe that they have expanded since then. They have like 00A and like 00B, so those are two even lighter shades in this one. I have 01 Natural, or I have 01 Creamy Vanilla, and this one works marginally for me, but the first shade I bought was 02 Natural, and it was super dark. I was like, how is this the lightest shade? Even this one is kind of dark on me. As you can see, it's very like tan, so if I'm wearing this, I do have to mix it with something else that I'm going to mention later in this video, or I just have to be a little bit more tanned that day, and like just take it down my neck. But still, this is a really great foundation, and I think my impression of this was so bad at first because I just did not like the color match on me. But as I've used this more often and kind of learned how to work with it, I have enjoyed it more, and I think that goes to show you that you can't really trust first impression foundation reviews. I think you need to kind of try it out a little bit more, learn how to work with it, and that's why I'm not a huge fan of watching like full face of first impression reviews, because it's not really an accurate review of the product. This is a beautiful full coverage foundation. If you have oily skin, I think you'll love this, and I don't even think it's super drying at all, so if you do have dry skin, I would say use a moisturizer beforehand, but I still think this will work for you. Either way, it's a really, really beautiful full coverage foundation. It just conceals all your imperfections. It will give you basically flawless skin, and I don't find that this looks super cakey throughout the day. I would just recommend starting off with a light hand, like maybe use one pump for your entire face, and then you can go in a little bit more if you need more coverage on like the cheeks or anything. But this is a really, really beautiful foundation. I love that they've expanded the shade range. This one's a little bit more expensive. I did buy this one for, I want to say $11. You can find it at Ulta now, and you can also find it at most Targets, CVS, basically anywhere that sells Milani. So normally I like to use brushes for more moussey, like thicker foundations, but I actually love using a sponge, so I don't really have a preference. I will use whatever I have on hand, just like with the LA Girl one. And if you can find your shade, this is a great foundation. Right now, the fullest of full coverage foundations, the Dermacol Makeup Cover. This is not technically a drugstore foundation because you can't really find this in any drugstores. It's only available online. It's on Amazon.com for I think $13. But this is the most full coverage foundation. This is used in film makeup and like drag makeup, so this is extremely, extremely full coverage. I don't even squeeze it. I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I take a really fluffy blending brush and just kind of stipple all over my face, and that just blends it out really well. So that's my preference with this foundation. I do like to use a brush with it. I don't like using a sponge because I find I'll go a little bit too ham on it. This is really beautiful. If you have like acne scarring, if you have any problems on your skin, anything you really, really want to cover up and you need extreme coverage, this is amazing. This is also great as a concealer. I know some people have used it as that. It's also very good as like an eyeshadow base. It's kind of like the MAC Select Cover Up or the new like P. Louise base. I don't use this every day, definitely not, because my skin is actually doing pretty okay right now. I don't need super full coverage. Either way, it's just a great multi-purpose product. I am in the shade 207, which I believe is the lightest shade. Also, I did make sure that Dermacol is cruelty-free. It was kind of shaky finding that information because this is a European brand, but they do appear to be cruelty-free, so great option. And to cap off the full coverage category, I almost feel bad mentioning this foundation because the shade range is probably the worst shade range I've ever seen. This is the Catrice HD Liquid Coverage Foundation, and I don't know if they have more shades of this on their own website, like Catrice.com. I have no idea, but what they have on Ulta is 4 shades, and they're all beige. I am in the shade 010 Light Beige. I believe this is the lightest shade that they sell, and yeah, it's really horrible, and I was like this close to not mentioning this foundation because the shade range is horrible, and I just don't want to I don't want to mention something that a lot of my followers cannot get their hands on because they don't have a shade in it. But I would definitely be lying if I said this wasn't in my top 10 favorite foundations, just because I use this probably the most often out of all the foundations in this video, and I love this foundation. So it makes me very, very disappointed to see a brand that is so big not have a good foundation shade range. Granted, Catrice is not like Maybelline, they're not a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I believe they're connected to Essence, but if you're big enough to be a brand in Ulta, you're big enough to have a decent foundation shade range. So they really need to expand what they sell in Ulta. I think this is a really great foundation, and I wish that people could get their hands on this one because it's a beautiful, beautiful foundation. This one is $13. It's an HD liquid coverage foundation, and it's matte. So this dries down to a matte finish. It's very, very liquidy. It's like a drop foundation. I'd actually compare this to the Tarte Rainforest of the Sea water foundation because that one is very similar finish. It's a lot of coverage and it dries down to a nice matte finish, but it's still very liquidy, so it blends out really well. It looks beautiful on the skin. It's nice and full coverage. It's easy to blend. It's basically, I think it's one of the best shade matches to my actual skin tone in this video, and I love this one. So I'm really, really disappointed that this one does not have a better shade range because I wish more people could try this one out. I do think it's a very versatile foundation that would work for a bunch of different skin types. So Catrice, get to work. You have some work to do. They also need to expand their liquid camouflage concealer line because that's also terrible. It's also HD, so it looks great on camera. I do wear this a lot on filming days, or if I'm taking pictures for my Instagram or whatever. I just wear this all the time. It's a really good foundation, and I'm very sad about the shade range. As I think I mentioned earlier, it's a liquidy foundation, so I do prefer applying liquidy foundations like this one with a sponge. Again, my favorite one is the Fenty Beauty Sponge or the AOA Wonder Blender, which is only $1. So I really love this foundation. I hate the shade range. Alright, so next we're kind of going to delve into the more medium to full coverage. These are not necessarily full coverage. They can be built up to full coverage, but I'd say on first coat they are medium. So this one is the No. 7 Stay Perfect Foundation. No. 7, I feel like they're not talked about a ton here on YouTube. I don't see a lot of their products being used. I have heard great things about their bronzers, and I've seen some people talk about this one, notably Samantha March. I love her channel, but I just haven't heard a lot about No. 7, and I think that they are a really great brand. They are affiliated with Boots, which is a UK beauty brand. I think it's the biggest like drugstore in the UK. So I've been to Boots before, and I love their stuff. This is probably one of the best drugstore foundations that you can find at Target. I don't believe that they have the No. 7 beauty stuff at Ulta. They only have their skincare. I believe it's like $15 to $17 depending on where you are, and this is a beautiful foundation. So the Stay Perfect foundation is for all skin types. It's a medium coverage foundation, and this one I find to be very true to the claims. It is SPF 15. The only thing I do not like about this foundation is the weird shade range. This one is called Warm Ivory, and under any other circumstance in any other brand, Warm Ivory would be perfect for me. I have very light skin with very yellow undertones, so normally Warm Ivory is like the perfect descriptor for my foundation shade, but for whatever reason this is really, really cool toned and really like almost beige. Pretty decent here, but on my face it just looks kind of gray on me. So I do have to mix this with the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter foundation. If you do have more cool toned skin, I think this will look great on you. I do have to mix this one because I don't have a lot of warm undertones. But it's a really, really beautiful finish. I do prefer to apply this one with a brush. It's just a really, really gorgeous foundation. So I think it's really great quality. The shade's kind of weird on me. I can wear it in like the more summer months when I'm a little bit tanner, but even then it kind of looks weird because it's more of a cool undertone. So I don't know what's going on with their shade range, but it's still a really great foundation. This one is the most expensive in this video. I think it's $15, but 15 or 17 depending on where you are, but it's still really, really good. Next I want to mention the Burt's Bees Goodness Glows liquid makeup. Actually this one might be the most expensive. This one is $16, and as you can see this is very, very light. It's a lot lighter than the No. 7 one. This is actually the lightest one I have in this video. It's 005 Porcelain. I do actually like to use this as a mixing foundation, so I will actually mix this with the Milani Conceal and Perfect. Obviously those are two very different colors. Or if I want a little bit more warmth, I will mix this with the No. 7 foundation. Either way, it's a really great mixing foundation, but I really just love this for both lightening up everything and just on its own, it's a really gorgeous foundation. This one is a medium to full coverage. I do think it's medium on its first application, and this is a very dewy foundation. So if you really like a glowy foundation, I think you'll enjoy this one. It doesn't really slip around on the face. Normally my main concern with glowy foundations is that it's going to move around and be a little bit oily on the skin, but this one just looks healthy. So I really enjoy this foundation. I'm definitely going to try and pick up a shade a little bit darker than this one so that I can use it right now because this is very, very light. I actually think I got the wrong shade, but either way, it's a really, really nice foundation, and I definitely recommend this one. It is $16. I definitely prefer this one with a brush. I think it's a very, very thick, almost like moussey foundation, so you do need a brush to kind of smooth everything out. It's going to be a little bit harder to blend it out with a sponge, in my personal opinion. It just adds a little bit of dew, a little bit of extra radiance and health to your skin, and I think it's a really beautiful one. The e.l.f. Cosmetics Flawless Finish Foundation is only $6, and it's one of my favorite drugstore foundations, hands down. This one has the smallest amount of product. This is 0.68 fluid ounces, but it's a really moussey, kind of thick foundation, so you really only need one pump. This one is medium to full coverage, again, like most of the foundations that I'm mentioning right now, and I am in the shade Porcelain. This is a really great shade match on me. I know you can't probably tell through the frosted bottle, but it's a really, really beautiful bottle. Nice packaging. It kind of feels nice and sleek, almost like a NARS foundation or like the Huda Beauty one. This one doesn't dry down completely. It's not super matte. I'd say it's more of like a satin finish. It does feel kind of thick on the face when you first blend it out. I definitely prefer using this with a brush. I really like the e.l.f. triangular buffing foundation brush for this one. So it does feel pretty thick, and it does kind of look like foundation at first, but when I set everything with powder, and it just looks nice and velvety smooth across the face. It covers up all your imperfections. This one is oil-free and it's SPF 15. I don't really think this is necessarily going to work on very, very oily skin types because it can be prone to slipping around. But I find that this one, if I do get a little bit oilier in my T-zone throughout the day, it doesn't look super greasy on my face. It just kind of lets the oils through in a way that looks like natural and healthy. It doesn't look like I'm an oil slick, so I really enjoy this one. I think it's great on drier skin types as well. It's going to really hydrate your cheeks, and just in general, really, really nice foundation. I know it's kind of hit and miss. I think the texture could be a little bit thick for some people, but I've really been enjoying this one. I do have a pretty decent shade range. It does go up to a nice deep shade. I just think the undertones are very lacking, so I'd love to see them expand this a little bit. Either way though, it's a $6 foundation and it's really, really good. This foundation is actually one that I don't really hear a lot of people talking about. This is the Lottie London Selfie Ready Medium Coverage Foundation. This one's a matte finish foundation, and it does have really good reviews on Ulta. I did hear a couple people talking about Lottie London when it like first launched on Ulta.com, but now I never hear anyone talking about the brand. So I wanted to try some stuff out. This was one of my favorite things that I've tried from them. 0.98 fluid ounces. It does look like a very, very small bottle, and it does feel like it has a little bit less product in it, but that's just because it's a plastic bottle, and most of the other things I'm talking about in this video are glass bottles. I'm in the shade light beige. It is almost a little bit too dark for me, so it'll be great in summer months if I happen to get a tan, which I normally don't. But worst case scenario, I either blend it down my neck or I add a little touch of the Burt's Bees foundation in there. If you can't tell, I'm a huge fan of mixing foundations, but it dries down to a matte finish. It is medium coverage, and you can actually use this with your fingers. You don't even have to use a sponge. This one I found to last really well throughout the day. I put it on at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I wore it until about 4 o'clock that night when I came home from classes. So I think it's a really, really great foundation. It stays on very well. I think it's a really great foundation. I hear no one talking about this one, and it's also one of the most affordable ones at the drugstore. This is only, I think it's $8 on Ulta.com, so I really enjoyed this one. Alright, and then I'm just going to finish the video off with a cult favorite foundation that a lot of people have talked about and a lot of people really love. This one is the Wet n Wild Photo Focus Foundation. I have the shade Nude Ivory. It's for light neutral skin tones. I wish I had like a light warm one instead. I think this one's a little bit pink on me. I think their shade range does pull to the pinker side. I might actually go pick up a more correct foundation shade for me, but this one is a really, really great foundation. This one looks amazing on flash photography, in video, just on camera in general. It's formulated specifically for that. It's called the Photo Focus Foundation, so they did, I believe, test it in a bunch of different camera conditions to see if it looked good on film, and it really does. So this is great for filming days, but besides that, it looks really nice on the skin. This one's not necessarily my favorite. I found ones that I like more from the drugstore, but I do think it's a great option, especially for only $6. I think this one is actually going to work for a lot more people than the e.l.f. foundation will, because I think the texture on this one is a little bit weirder. The most off-putting thing about this foundation to me, besides the weird like undertones, is the smell. It does smell like paint thinner, but if you can get past that, I think it's a really nice foundation. I prefer to use this one with a sponge. It just blends out really easily because it is more liquidy, and if you can get past the smell, it's a really, really great one, and it looks amazing with the Photo Focus Concealer as its pair. This is amazing. I like to have a bunch of different shades of this for when I'm doing freelance work on other people. I think it's a really great, inexpensive option and really nice. Yeah, that rounds out my top 10 favorite drugstore affordable cruelty-free foundations. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you wanted to see my full foundation collection. I'm just waiting until I get some new releases in there, and then I will show you everything I have. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments below what your favorite foundations are. I would love to try some of your recommendations. And if you made it to the very end of this video, I love you very much. Thank you so much for watching my channel.